The dust never settled on Threshold 7. It hung in the air like a curse, mixing with the smoke from burning buildings and the metallic taste of blood. Doyen pressed his hand against the wound in his side and felt the warm wetness spreading across his uniform. The pain had started as a sharp shock, but now it was fading into a cold numbness that scared him more than the pain ever did. He could hear them coming. The Veskari made sounds that shouldn't exist in nature, clicking and screeching that echoed through the ruined streets of the mining colony. His rifle lay 10 feet away, broken in half. His medical kit was empty. He had used the last bandage on Private Kangman 15 minutes ago, right before the kid stopped breathing. Doyen leaned back against the concrete wall and closed his eyes. He was 28 years old and he was going to die on a planet whose real name he didn't even know. Everyone just called it Threshold 7 because it was the 7th colony, past the threshold of safe space. He thought about his mother back on Earth. She would get a letter saying he died serving humanity. She would never know that he spent his last moments hiding in an alley, bleeding out while monsters hunted him. The clicking grew louder. Doyen opened his eyes and saw 3 of them turn the corner. The Veskari looked like someone had taken insects and nightmares and mixed them together. They walked on 6 legs, their bodies covered in black armor that seemed to absorb light. Their heads were wrong, split down the middle with rows of teeth that dripped with acid. But the worst part was their eyes. They had dozens of small eyes that moved independently, always watching, always hunting. One of them spotted him. It made a sound like metal scraping against metal, calling to the others. Doyen tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't work anymore. He had seen people die from wounds like this. He had maybe 5 minutes left, probably less. The Veskari were in no hurry. They knew he was finished. Then the air changed. Doyen felt it before he saw anything, a pressure that made his ears pop and his skin tingle. The Veskari felt it too. They stopped moving, their eyes all turning toward the end of the alley. She walked out of the smoke like a ghost. She was human, or at least she looked human. Long black hair tied back, face covered in dust and blood that wasn't hers. She wore armor that didn't match any military he knew, made from materials that seemed to shimmer and shift in the dim light. But it was the weapon in her hands that made Doyen forget about dying for a moment. It looked like a spear, but calling it a spear was like calling the sun a light bulb. The shaft was 7 feet long and made from something that glowed with a soft blue light. The blade at the tip wasn't metal. It looked like concentrated starlight, energy given shape and purpose. The whole weapon hummed with power that Doyen could feel in his bones. The Veskari attacked all at once. The woman moved like water, like wind, like things that couldn't be stopped or caught. She spun the spear and the blade cut through the first Veskari's armor like it was paper. The creature fell in 2 pieces, its insides burning with blue fire. The second one tried to flank her. She reversed her grip and drove the spear backward without looking, punching through its head. The third one got close enough to strike. Its claws raked across her side, tearing through armor and flesh. She didn't scream. She pulled the spear free and took the creature's head off with a single motion. Then she stood there, breathing hard, blood running down her side. She looked at Doyen and their eyes met. Hers were dark brown, almost black, and older than her face suggested. "You're still alive," she said. Her voice was quiet, almost gentle. "That's good." More clicking echoed through the streets, lots more. The woman looked toward the sound and something like sadness crossed her face. "Too many," she said. "There are always too many." She moved to stand between Doyen and the street. The life spear, that's what she called it in his mind, though she never said the name, pulsed brighter. Dozens of Veskari poured into the alley. She fought like nothing Doyen had ever seen. Every movement was perfect, every strike was death. The spear cut through armor and flesh, leaving trails of blue fire in the air. But there were too many. For every 3 she killed, 6 more appeared. Doyen watched as they overwhelmed her through sheer numbers. A claw caught her leg. Another tore across her back. She kept fighting, kept killing, but she was slowing down. Blood covered her armor now, mixing with the alien ichor. She killed the last one standing over Doyen and collapsed to her knees. The spear clattered against the ground, its light flickering. She looked at him and smiled, though blood ran from her mouth. "I couldn't save them all," she said. "I tried for so long. 300 years. But I couldn't save everyone." Doyen stared at her. 300 years? That was impossible. She looked 30 at most. She crawled toward him, dragging the spear. Her breathing was wet and wrong. She had minutes left just like him. 2 dying soldiers in an alley at the edge of space. The life spear, she said, her hand on the shaft. It has to pass to someone new. Someone who still believes. Someone who still fights. She looked at him with those ancient eyes. Will you fight? Doyen didn't understand what she was asking. His vision was blurring. He was so cold, I don't have a choice, he said. I'm dying. Yes, she said. You are. But you don't have to. She lifted the spear with the last of her strength and pressed the blade against his chest. Doyen tried to pull away, but his body wouldn't respond. The blue light grew brighter. So bright he had to close his eyes. Touch my lance and live, she whispered. Power exploded through Doyen's body. It felt like lightning in his veins, like fire in his lungs, like every nerve ending screaming at once. The wound in his side closed. His broken ribs knitted together. His heart, which had been stuttering and weak, beat strong and fast. Life poured into him like water into a drowning man. He opened his eyes and saw her. The woman was lying on the ground, the spear rolling from her fingers. The light was leaving her eyes like the sun going down. She was dying. No worse than dying. She was fading, her life flowing out of her and into him. No, Doyen said. He tried to reach for her, but his body wouldn't move yet, still adjusting to the power flooding through it. No, what did you do? She smiled. It was peaceful, accepting. What I had to do, what you'll have to do someday. Her voice was barely a whisper now. Find the others. Finish what we started. Save them. I don't understand, Doyen said. I don't know what to do. You will, she said. The life spear will teach you. It remembers everything. Her eyes found his one last time. My name is Hana, remember me. Someone should remember. Then she was gone. Her eyes went empty and her chest stopped moving. Doyen felt the moment she died like a physical blow. The connection between them, created by the spear, snapped like a cut wire. He was alive. She was dead. He had lived and she had died to make it possible. The life spear rolled across the ground and stopped against his hand. The moment he touched it, he knew. He felt the weapon recognize him, accept him, bond with him. It was his now. The power was his, and so was the terrible purpose that came with it. Doyen stood up on legs that should have been broken. He picked up the life spear and felt it hum in his hands, eager and alive. Around him, the alley was silent. The Veskari were gone, fled, or dead. Smoke drifted between buildings under a sky filled with burning ships. He looked down at Hana's body. She looked smaller now, younger. Whatever power had kept her alive for 3 centuries was gone. She was just a woman who had died to save a stranger. Doyen heard engines overhead, human ships coming to evacuate survivors. They were too late for most of the colony. Too late for his unit, too late for the thousands who had died today, but they were here now and he was alive to see them. He knelt beside Hana and closed her eyes. I'll remember, he promised her, and I'll finish it. I don't know how, but I will. The life spear pulsed in agreement, its light steady and sure in the darkness. Doyen woke up in a white room that smelled like antiseptic and recycled air. For a moment he thought he was dead, that everything after the wound had been a dying dream. Then he felt the weight beside him and knew it was real. The life spear lay on the bed next to him, wrapped in plain cloth like someone had tried to hide what it was. The blue glow leaked through the fabric anyway, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. Doyen reached for it, and the moment his fingers touched the shaft, he felt complete again. It scared him how natural it felt. The door opened and a man in a military uniform walked in. He was older, maybe 50, with gray hair and sharp eyes that looked like they saw everything. His name tag read Commander Minho. You've been unconscious for 3 days, Minho said. He pulled up a chair and sat down, his eyes never leaving the wrapped weapon. We thought you might not wake up. Whatever that thing did to you, it changed your entire body chemistry. Your cells are regenerating faster than anything we've ever seen. Your heart rate, your brain activity, everything is enhanced. Doyen sat up. He felt strong, stronger than he had ever felt in his life. The wound that should have killed him was gone without even a scar. Where is she? The woman who saved me, Hana. Minho's expression didn't change. We found her body in the alley with you. She's been dead for approximately 72 hours. We ran identification but found nothing. No records, no DNA match, no fingerprints in any database. As far as our systems are concerned, she never existed. She told me her name was Hana, Doyen said. She said she was 300 years old. That's impossible, Minho said, but his tone suggested he wasn't entirely sure anymore. Soldier, we need to talk about that weapon. Command wants it for study. We need to understand what it is and how it works. It could change the course of this war. Doyen's hand tightened on the life spear. The weapon responded to his emotion, glowing brighter through the cloth. No, he said simply. Minho leaned forward. That wasn't a request. That's military property now. You'll surrender it for analysis. It's not military property, Doyen said. It's mine. She gave it to me. And if you try to take it, it won't work for you anyway. I can feel it. The weapon is bonded to me now. They stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, Minho stood up. You're confined to this ship until we sort this out. Don't try anything stupid. He walked to the door, then paused. For what it's worth, you're the only survivor from your unit. Everyone else died on Threshold 7. Whatever that woman gave you, she thought you were worth saving. Try to remember that. After he left, Doyen unwrapped the life spear completely. In the sterile light of the medical bay, it looked even more alien and beautiful. He ran his fingers along the shaft and felt something stir in his mind. Not words exactly, but impressions, feelings, memories that weren't his. He saw Hana as she had been decades ago, standing in a ruined city on a planet he didn't recognize. She was younger then, or looked younger, her face not yet carrying the weight of centuries. She held the life spear and fought against creatures that made the Vescari look simple. He felt her exhaustion, her loneliness, her desperate hope that someday the war would end. The vision shifted. He saw her receiving the life spear from an old man who looked like he had lived 1,000 years. The man was dying, fading just like Hana had, his life pouring into her so she could continue the fight. Find the others, the old man whispered. Unite the 7. Only together can we end this. Doyen gasped and the vision broke. His hands were shaking. The life spear was showing him its history, teaching him what he needed to know. But the knowledge came with emotions attached, and the weight of Hana's long life pressed down on him like a physical thing. The next 2 weeks were strange. Doyen was kept under observation but not exactly imprisoned. He could move around the ship, eat in the cafeteria, even access some areas. But there were always guards nearby watching him, watching the life spear that he carried everywhere because he couldn't stand to be separated from it. He started to understand the weapon better. It wasn't just a spear. It was alive in a way, or at least aware. It responded to his thoughts and emotions. When he focused on healing, the blade would glow with a gentle blue light. When he thought about fighting, it would hum with barely contained power. And sometimes, late at night, it would show him more visions of Hana's life. He saw her searching through ancient ruins for something she never found. He saw her fighting alone on a dozen different worlds while civilizations fell around her. He saw her sitting in quiet rooms, writing letters to people who were long dead, just so she wouldn't forget how to talk to someone who wasn't an enemy. A woman came to see him on the 14th day. She was younger than Minho, maybe 35, with intelligent eyes and hands that were calloused from years of careful work. She introduced herself as Somin, a xenoarchaeologist who studied dead civilizations and the things they left behind. I've been researching your weapon, she said, sitting across from him in the observation room. Or trying to. There's almost nothing in our databases about it. But I found references in some very old texts, documents from civilizations that died out thousands of years ago. They called weapons like yours precursor relics, made by a species that existed before any of the current galactic powers rose to prominence. Doyen listened carefully. This was more information than anyone else had given him. According to the legends, Somin continued, the precursors created 7 weapons to fight a great enemy. Each weapon represented a fundamental force of the universe. Life, death, time, space, matter, energy, and consciousness. Your spear, the life spear as you call it, is the weapon of life itself. Hana said something about finding the others, Doyen said. She said to unite the 7. Somin's eyes widened. She knew about the other weapons? Did she say where they were? She died before she could tell me much of anything, Doyen said. The memory still hurt. Would probably always hurt. But the spear shows me things. Memories. I think she was searching for the other weapons for a long time. If the other weapons exist and we could find them, Somin said slowly, it might be possible to end this war. The Vescari have been destroying worlds for decades. Nothing we do stops them for long. They just keep coming. But if the legends are true, the 7 weapons together have the power to destroy the Vescari permanently. Before Doyen could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the ship. The lights switched to emergency red. Over the intercom, someone shouted about Veskari ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel right on top of them. Doyen grabbed the life spear and ran for the door. Soman followed him. They reached the main corridor just as the first impact shook the ship. Through the windows, Doyen could see Veskari attack ships, black and twisted things that looked like they had been grown rather than built. "We need to get to the escape pods," Soman said. But Doyen wasn't listening. He could feel something through the life spear, a sensation like insects crawling across his skin. The Veskari had boarded the ship. They were killing people right now, and he could feel each death like a distant scream. He ran toward the feeling, toward the death, with Soman calling after him. He found them in the crew quarters, 5 Veskari warriors ripping through a group of unarmed civilians. Bodies lay on the floor. Blood covered the walls. Doyen didn't think. He just moved. The life spear came alive in his hands, blazing with blue light. He swung it, and the blade cut through the first Veskari like it was made of smoke. The creature's body burned with that strange blue fire, turning to ash in seconds. The others turned on him. He fought like Hana had fought, letting the weapon guide him. Every strike was perfect. Every movement was exactly what it needed to be. He felt the life spear drinking in the life force of the creatures he killed, using that energy to make him faster, stronger. One of them got through his guard and slashed across his arm. The pain was sharp and immediate, but then the wound closed, healing in seconds as the life spear channeled energy back into him. He was using the life he had taken from his enemies to repair himself. It should have horrified him. Instead, it felt natural, right, like this was what the weapon was made for. When the last Veskari fell, Doyen stood in the corridor breathing hard. He wasn't tired exactly, but he felt different, like something inside him had shifted. The civilians he had saved were staring at him with a mixture of gratitude and fear. Soman appeared beside him. "That was incredible," she said, "but also terrifying. Do you understand what you just did? You drained their life force and used it to heal yourself. That's not human. That's something else entirely." Doyen looked at the life spear. The blue glow was fading back to its normal pulse. "Hana did this for 300 years, he said quietly. Fought and killed and healed and never stopped. How did she stay human through all of that?" "Maybe she didn't," Soman said. "Maybe that's why she looked so sad when you saw her. The ship managed to drive off the Veskari attack but took heavy damage. They limped to the nearest station for repairs." Doyen knew he couldn't stay on a military ship anymore. Command would either take the life spear by force or lock him up to study him. He needed to find the other weapons to finish what Hana started. That night he found Somin in the research lab. "Will you help me?" he asked. "Find the other weapons, find the people who carry them. End this war properly." The stolen shuttle shook as it entered the atmosphere of the abandoned moon. Doyen gripped the controls while Soman checked her instruments in the seat beside him. They had been running for 2 weeks now, jumping from system to system, following clues that Somin found in ancient texts and data fragments. The military had sent 3 ships after them before giving up. There were bigger problems than 2 deserters with a mysterious weapon. The moon had no name in any current database. It was just a dead rock orbiting a gas giant in a system that nobody visited anymore. But Somin's research said this was where the precursors had built one of their installations, a place where they kept records of their greatest works. The shuttle touched down on a flat plain of gray dust. The landscape looked like it had been dead for 10,000 years. Nothing grew here. Nothing lived here. Even the air was thin and cold, barely breathable. They suited up and stepped out into the silence. Doyen carried the life spear and felt it vibrate gently in his hands. The weapon recognized this place somehow, responded to it. "The entrance should be near here," Soman said, checking her scanner. "Underground, hidden by rock and time. But the life spear might be able to help us find it. These places were built to respond to the weapons." Doyen held the spear up and focused. The blue light grew brighter, casting strange shadows across the dusty ground. Then he felt it. A pull in a specific direction, like the weapon was pointing him toward something it wanted him to see. They walked for an hour across the barren landscape before they found it, a crack in the ground, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. But when Doyen brought the life spear close, the crack widened. Stone that had been sealed for millennia responded to the weapon's presence and opened like a door. The passage led down into darkness. Their helmet lights cut through the black, showing walls made of material that wasn't quite metal and wasn't quite stone. Everything was covered in dust, but underneath that dust, Doyen could see symbols and patterns that hurt to look at too long. The passage opened into a vast chamber. It was so large that their lights couldn't reach the ceiling or the far walls. But in the center of the chamber stood something that still worked after all these years, a column of light, pale and steady, rising from a circular platform. Salman approached it carefully, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. "It's a holographic system," she said with wonder in her voice. "Still powered after thousands of years. The precursors really were beyond anything we can imagine." Doyen stepped onto the platform with the life spear. The moment his foot touched the ancient metal, the column of light expanded. Images appeared in the air around them, moving and shifting, showing scenes from a time so long ago that it felt like looking at myths. He saw the precursors. They didn't look like any species he knew. They were tall and thin, with too many joints in their limbs and heads that were almost triangular, but their eyes were kind and sad, the eyes of beings who had seen too much and knew what was coming. The hologram shifted and showed the galaxy as it had been 10,000 years ago. Hundreds of civilizations, thousands of worlds, all living and thriving. Then the darkness came. The Viscari poured out of some hidden place between dimensions, consuming everything they touched. World after world fell. Species went extinct by the millions. The precursors fought back. Doyen watched as they created the 7 weapons, forging them from materials that shouldn't exist and powering them with forces that science couldn't explain. Each weapon was given to a champion from a different species, warriors who had proven themselves worthy. He saw the 7 standing together for the first time. A precursor with a spear of light, a being made of living crystal with a blade of darkness, a creature of pure energy wielding a staff that bent time, and 4 others, each different, each unique, each carrying a weapon of impossible power. Together they pushed back the Vescari. The war lasted centuries, but slowly, surely, the 7 champions and their weapons turned the tide. They fought their way to the Vescari home dimension, a place of horror where consumed worlds were processed into biomass for the swarm. But the final battle took everything. Doyen watched as the 7 champions gave their lives to seal away the Vescari, trapping them in their own dimension and closing the door behind them. The weapons survived, scattered across the galaxy, waiting for the day when they would be needed again, because the seal wasn't permanent. The hologram showed the future, or what the precursors had predicted. In 10,000 years, the seal would weaken. The Viscari would return, and when they did, only the 7 weapons united could stop them forever. "That's now," Soman whispered. 10,000 years have passed. The seal is breaking. That's why the Viscari are back. The hologram changed again, showing something new. A map appeared, marking locations across the galaxy. 7 points of light, each one pulsing with a different color. The locations of the 7 weapons. Doyen stepped closer, memorizing what he saw. The life spear was marked in blue at his current location, but there were 6 others scattered across known space. Green, red, purple, yellow, orange, and white. 6 weapons, 6 potential allies in the fight against the Viscari. One of the lights was relatively close, only a few systems away. It pulsed with a dark red color that made Doyen's stomach tighten. The hologram zoomed in, showing a planet consumed by war. The surface was scarred with craters and burning cities. The Viscari had been there for years, systematically destroying everything. Taehyung. Somin read from the data appearing beside the red light. The Death Blade. Last confirmed location was on the planet Ashfall. But that world has been under Vescari control for 5 years. Everyone thought it was completely lost. "If someone is still there fighting," Doyen said, "we need to find them." The hologram flickered and then showed something that made both of them freeze. An image appeared of the 7 weapons united, placed into a circular mechanism. Then an explosion of light, spreading across dimensions, erasing the Vescari from existence completely and permanently. But underneath the image, symbols appeared. Salman translated them slowly, her voice shaking. "The price of victory. The final directive requires absolute sacrifice. All 7 wielders must give not just their lives, but their very existence. They will be erased from reality as if they never lived. No memory, no record, no trace. This is the cost to save all life in the galaxy." Doyen stared at the words. Hana had known this. She had carried this knowledge for 300 years, searching for the other weapons, knowing that finding them meant finding 7 people who would have to agree to be erased from existence. No wonder she had looked so sad. We don't have to tell the others, Soman said quietly. Not right away. We can find them first, fight together. Maybe there's another way. No, Doyen said. Hana kept secrets and it ate at her for centuries. If I'm asking people to help me, they deserve to know the truth. He looked at the life spear in his hands. Even if the truth is terrible. The hologram faded and the chamber went dark except for their helmet lights. They stood in silence for a moment, processing what they had learned. The weight of it was crushing. They weren't just trying to win a war. They were trying to find 6 people willing to sacrifice everything, including the memory of their sacrifice. They made their way back to the shuttle and prepared for the jump to Ashfall. The trip would take 3 days through faster-than-light travel. Doyen spent that time training with the life spear, learning its abilities through practice and through the visions it still showed him of Hana's long life. He discovered he could heal not just himself, but others. When Somin cut her hand on a sharp edge, he touched the wound with the spear and it closed instantly. But he felt the cost. The healing drained something from him, a tiredness that went deeper than physical exhaustion. He also learned that the spear could sense death approaching. When he focused, he could feel the life force of everyone on the shuttle, could sense how strong or weak it was. It was a strange and uncomfortable ability, knowing who was healthy and who was sick just by being near them. The visions from Hana became stronger too. He saw her visiting worlds that were now destroyed, talking to people who were now dead. He felt her loneliness like a weight on his chest. She had outlived everyone she ever cared about. Friends, family, lovers all gone to dust while she continued fighting because someone had to. One vision stood out from the rest. He saw Hana standing in a place that looked like the chamber they had just visited. She was younger then, maybe only a few decades into carrying the life spear. An old woman stood with her, the previous carrier of the weapon. You'll want to give up, the old woman said. 1,000 times over the years, you'll want to just stop. To let someone else carry this burden. But you can't, because if you stop, everything ends. Every person who ever lived, every child who might be born, all of it ends in the Vescary's hunger. How did you stand it? Hana asked. How did you keep going? The old woman smiled sadly. I thought about the people I saved, the worlds that still exist because I fought, and I hoped that someday someone would finish what we started. That's all any of us can do, fight and hope. The vision faded and Doyen opened his eyes. He understood now why Hana had given him the life spear, not because he was special or chosen or particularly heroic. The journey to find the remaining 5 weapons took 8 months. 8 months of jumping from system to system, following the map that the precursor installation had shown them. 8 months of fighting and running and watching worlds burn while they searched for the people who could help them end it all. They found Yunji III on a research station that was studying time anomalies near a black hole. She was a scientist who had accidentally bonded with the timekeeper's staff when her station was attacked. The weapon let her see moments into the future, let her slow time around herself, let her undo small mistakes by rewinding a few seconds. She was young and terrified and cried when Doyen told her what the final directive required. But she joined them anyway because the alternative was watching everyone die slowly. Hyunwoo was 4th. He carried the Spacebender Gauntlet and had been using it to evacuate refugees from doomed worlds, folding space to move thousands of people across impossible distances in seconds. He was tired and sad and agreed immediately when he learned he could trade his life to save everyone else. He said it was a better deal than he expected. Nari was 5th. The Matterweaver crown sat on her head like a ring of silver light, letting her reshape physical matter with a thought. She had been using it to build shelters and create food for survivors. She was a mother who had lost her children to the Vescari. She said she had nothing left to live for anyway, so she might as well die for something meaningful. Junho came 6th. The energy caster orb floated above his palm, crackling with power that could level mountains or power entire cities. He had been fighting on the front lines for 2 years, burning through Vescari fleets like they were made of paper. He barely spoke anymore. The weapon had changed him the most, turned him into something more energy than flesh. He just nodded when told about the price and said nothing else. Mireille was last and hardest to find. She carried the Mindshaper ring and had been hiding because the weapon scared her. It let her read thoughts, plant ideas, even control minds if she wanted to. She had accidentally killed people when she first bonded with it, pushing thoughts into their heads so hard that their brains broke. When they finally found her, She was living alone on an abandoned colony, too afraid of her own power to be near anyone. Doyen sat with her for 3 days, telling her about Hana and the burden of power and the choice between living with fear or dying with purpose. On the 3rd day, she agreed to join them, not because she was brave, but because she was tired of being afraid. 7 weapons, 7 wielders, 1 last mission. They gathered on a military ship near the edge of known space. The Galactic Assembly had finally agreed to help once they saw what 7 precursor weapons could do together. They provided ships, supplies, and soldiers. But everyone knew the real battle would be fought by 7 people who had agreed to stop existing. The night before they left for the Veskari home dimension, the 7 of them sat together in a quiet room. They had fought side by side for months now, had saved each other's lives countless times, had become something like a family. Now they had to say goodbye to everything. I keep thinking about what comes after, Yunji said. She was the youngest at 23, still had hope in her eyes despite everything. Not for us. We'll be gone, but for everyone else. They'll wake up and the Veskari will just be gone. They won't know why. They won't know what we did. That's the point, Taehyung said. He was sharpening the death blade even though it never got dull. Old habits from 5 years of war. If people knew, they'd feel guilty. They'd build monuments and tell stories. Better that they just think the Veskari disappeared. Clean and simple. I recorded a message, Nari said quietly. Hid it in a data cache that won't be found for 100 years. Just our names and what we did. So someone, someday, will know we were real. The precursors said we'd be erased completely, Junho said. His voice sounded distant, like he was already fading. No records, no memories, no traces. Your message will disappear too. Maybe, Nari said. But I had to try. Doyen looked at all of them, these 6 people who had become the most important people in his life. He thought about Hana, and how lonely she must have been, carrying the life spear for 300 years with no one who understood. At least he had found others who shared the burden. At least he wouldn't die alone. When I first got the life spear, he said, I was angry. Angry at Hana for dying. Angry at the weapon for choosing me. Angry at the universe for being so cruel. But now I understand. She gave me a gift. Not just life, but purpose. A reason to matter. And all of you gave me that too. So thank you. They sat in silence after that, 7 people waiting for the dawn that would be their last. The journey to the Veskari home dimension took 3 days through unstable space. The 7 of them stood together on the bridge, their weapons glowing and pulsing in harmony. The life spears blue, the death blades black, the timekeeper staffs silver, the spacebender gauntlets purple, the matter weaver crowns white, the energy caster orbs gold, and the mind shaper rings green. 7 colors, 7 powers, 7 lives about to end. When they emerged from the jump, they saw hell. The Veskari home dimension was a nightmare of consumed worlds and twisted biology. Planets had been hollowed out and turned into breeding grounds. Stars had been drained of energy to power the swarm. The sky itself was wrong, colors that shouldn't exist swirling in patterns that hurt to look at. The Veskari came at them in numbers that blacked out the stars. Millions of ships, billions of warriors, all controlled by a single hive mind that had been hungry for 10,000 years. The military fleet that had escorted them was destroyed in minutes. But the 7 fought on. Hyunwoo folded space, teleporting entire Veskari fleets into black holes. Hunyo unleashed energy that vaporized thousands at a time. Nari reshaped their ships into debris. Mirai confused their hive mind, making them attack each other. Yunji saw their attacks before they came and warned the others. Taehyung killed anything that got close, and Doyen healed them all, keeping them alive through injuries that should have been fatal. They fought for hours that felt like years. The weapons grew brighter with each moment, feeding off each other's power, becoming something greater than the sum of their parts. They carved a path through the swarm, through the nightmare dimension, toward the center where the precursor map had shown the dimensional anchor existed. They found it at the heart of a consumed world, a massive structure of flesh and metal that pulsed with dark energy. This was what allowed the Veskari to exist across multiple dimensions, what made them impossible to destroy permanently. Destroy this and they would be trapped in their home dimension. Activate the final directive and they would be erased completely. But the anchor was protected by something they hadn't expected. A Veskari queen, larger than a battleship, ancient and intelligent and filled with hatred for the species that had sealed her kind away 10,000 years ago. The battle was brutal. The Queen was stronger than anything they had faced. She moved with impossible speed for something so large. Her screams shattered Hyunwoo's shields and her claws tore through Nari's matter constructs like paper. One of her limbs caught Junho and crushed the life out of him before Doyun could reach him with the life spear. Junho died with the energy caster orb still floating above his hand. His last act was to release all the energy he had been holding back, a blast so powerful that it burned away half the Queen's body. She screamed and fell, but she wasn't dead yet. They didn't have time to mourn. 6 now instead of 7, they pressed forward. Taehyung drove the death blade into the Queen's heart, and the blade drank her existence, erasing her from reality. The Queen's scream cut off mid-sound as she simply stopped being. The path to the anchor was clear. They gathered around it, 6 wielders and 6 weapons, and saw the mechanism that the precursor hologram had shown them. 7 slots arranged in a circle, waiting for the weapons that would activate the final directive. "We're 1 short," Yoonji said, looking at the empty slot where the energy caster orb should have gone. Mirai stepped forward, her face calm. "The Mindshaper ring can bridge the gap. I can link our minds together, make 6 weapons act like 7. But it will burn me out completely. I'll go first." Before anyone could argue, she placed the ring into 1 slot and then touched each of them, creating a mental link that bound them all together. Doyun felt their minds merge, felt their thoughts and feelings and memories become shared. For a brief moment, they were truly one being with 6 bodies and 6 weapons. Mirai smiled, and then her body crumbled to ash. The ring stayed in place, glowing with green light that connected to all of them. 5 now. They placed their weapons one by one. Hyunwoo's gauntlet, Nari's crown, Eunji's staff, Taehyung's blade. The mechanism began to glow, power building as each weapon locked into place. Doyun held the life spear, the last weapon, the one that would complete the final directive and erase them all from existence. Through the mental link that Mirai had created, he felt his companion's thoughts. Hyunwoo thinking about the refugees he had saved and hoping they would have good lives. Nari remembering her children and feeling at peace knowing she would see them again soon. Hyunji scared but determined, holding on to the hope that their sacrifice would matter. The shuttle crashed through the roof of an abandoned factory and skidded across the floor in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Doyun's head slammed against the console despite the straps holding him in place. Blood ran down his face from a cut above his eye, but the wound was already closing. The life spear healed him automatically now, like breathing. Soman groaned in the seat beside him. Her arm was broken, bone pushing against skin at a wrong angle. Doyun touched the spear to her shoulder and felt the energy flow through it. Her arm straightened with a wet crack and she gasped in pain. But when it was done, the break was gone. "I'll never get used to that," she said, flexing her fingers. They climbed out of the wreckage and looked around. The factory had been making something once, but now it was just empty space and broken machines. Through the holes in the walls, they could see the city burning. Ashfall had earned its name. Ash fell from the sky like black snow, covering everything in a layer of gray death. Doyun felt the pulse again, stronger now. The Deathblade was close, maybe only a few miles away. But between them and it were Viscari. He could sense them through the life spear. Hundreds of life signatures that felt wrong and hungry. "We need to move," he said. "Stay close to me." They ran through the ruined streets of a city that had once held millions. Now the only things moving were Viscari patrols and small groups of human survivors hiding in the rubble. Doyun saw bodies everywhere, some fresh and some that had been there so long they were just bones and ash. A patrol of 6 Viscari turned a corner ahead of them. Doyun didn't hesitate. He charged forward with the life spear blazing blue in his hands. The first creature died before it could react, cut in half by the glowing blade. The others swarmed him, but he had learned how to fight since leaving the military ship. The spear moved like an extension of his body, blocking and striking in movements that looked like a deadly dance. One of them caught him across the back with its claws. The pain was sharp but brief. He spun and drove the spear through its chest, feeling its life drain into the weapon and then into him. The wound on his back closed. He was using the enemy's life to heal himself, just like he had learned to do. When the last Viscari fell, Doyun stood breathing hard. Soman stared at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Fear maybe, or wonder. Probably both. "You're getting better at that," she said quietly. "I don't know if that's a good thing," Doyun replied. Each time he fought, each time he drained life from his enemies to sustain himself, he felt a little less human. A little more like the weapon he carried. They kept moving. The pulse from the death blade grew stronger with each block they crossed. Then they heard the sounds of fighting ahead. Not the clicking of Vescari, but human weapons firing in controlled bursts. Someone was making a stand. They rounded a corner and saw it. A group of about 30 humans had barricaded themselves inside what looked like an old government building. Vescari were attacking from 3 sides, trying to break through the defenses. Bodies of both humans and aliens littered the street. Standing on top of the barricade was a man who could only be Tai Hyung. He held a sword that looked like it had been forged from midnight itself. The blade was pure black, so dark that it seemed to absorb light. When it cut through a Vescari warrior, the creature didn't burn or bleed. It just stopped existing, like it had been erased from reality. Tai Hyung moved with brutal efficiency. There was no grace in his fighting, no unnecessary movements. Every strike killed. Every step was calculated. He looked like he had been fighting for so long that he had forgotten how to do anything else. Doyen raised the life spear and charged into the battle from the side. The blue light of his weapon caught Tai Hyung's attention for just a moment. Their eyes met across the battlefield and something passed between them. Recognition. The weapons knew each other, and through the weapons, so did they. Together they tore through the Vescari assault. Where the life spear cut, blue fire burned. Where the death blade struck, existence simply ended. The aliens broke and fled, something Doyen had never seen them do before. Usually they fought until every last one was dead. But the combined power of 2 precursor weapons was too much even for their hunger. When the last Vescari disappeared into the ruins, silence fell over the street. The human survivors stared at Doyen and Tai Hyung with expressions of shock and hope. They had been dying slowly for 5 years. Now, suddenly, there were 2 people with weapons that could actually hurt their enemy. Tai Hyung jumped down from the barricade. Up close, Doyen could see how the war had marked him. He was young, probably only 25, but his eyes were ancient and hard. His face was covered in scars that even the death blade couldn't heal. His hand shook slightly when he wasn't holding the sword. "Another weapon," Tai Hyung said. His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it for talking in a long time. "I thought I was the only one left." "There are 7 weapons total," Doyen said. "Mine is the life spear. Yours is the death blade. We need to find the other 5 and unite them. It's the only way to stop the Vescari permanently." Tai Hyung laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Stop them? We can't even slow them down. I've been fighting on this planet for 5 years. Do you know how many I've killed? Thousands. Tens of thousands. And there are always more. They just keep coming." "That's because we're fighting them the wrong way," Soman said, stepping forward. "The precursors designed these weapons to work together. Separately, they're powerful. Together, they can end this war forever." "Forever," Tai Hyung repeated. He looked at the death blade in his hand. "Nothing is forever. Everything dies eventually. That's what this weapon taught me. Death comes for everyone and everything. The only question is when. Then help us make sure death comes for the Vescari before it comes for humanity," Doyen said. "We found a precursor installation. We learned the truth about what these weapons can do when they're united. But we need all 7 wielders working together." Tai Hyung was quiet for a long moment. He looked at the survivors behind him, at the burning city around them, at the ash falling from the sky like snow. "And what happens to us? The wielders. What's the cost of using these weapons together?" Doyen met his eyes and told him the truth. "We'll be erased. Not just killed. Erased from existence completely. No one will remember us. It will be like we never lived at all. That's the price to save everyone else." He expected anger or refusal. Instead, Tai Hyung just nodded slowly. "I've been dead inside for 3 years now," he said quietly. "I just kept moving because stopping meant everyone else died. If my death actually means something, if it ends this nightmare, then that's more than I ever hoped for." "You don't have to decide now," Doyen said. "Yes, I do," Tai Hyung replied. "Because if I think about it too long, I might realize I want to live. And then I won't be able to do what needs to be done." He looked at the survivors. "These people need to evacuate. The Vescari will send more. They always send more. Can your ship carry them?" "Our ship crashed," Soman said. "But I can jury-rig the distress beacon to broadcast on military frequencies. Someone will come for them." While Soman worked on the beacon, Doyen and Taehyung stood watch. The life spear and death blade pulsed in harmony, their energies resonating with each other. Doyen could feel the connection between the weapons growing stronger. "How long have you carried yours?" Taehyung asked. "A few weeks," Doyen said. "You?" 5 years. "I took it from a woman who was dying when the Veskari first invaded this planet. She didn't give it to me. I just picked it up and it bonded to me. I didn't know what it was or what it would cost me." "What did it cost you?" Taehyung was quiet for a moment. "Everything I was before. Every soft feeling, every kind thought, every moment of peace. The death blade doesn't just kill the enemy, it kills parts of you too. Little pieces die every time you use it. After 5 years, there's not much left of the person I used to be." Doyen thought about the life spear, and how it made him feel more alive but also less human. He wondered if all the weapons changed their wielders this way, if the price of power was always losing yourself to it. A Veskari ship appeared in the sky above them, much larger than the patrol craft they had seen before. It was a brood carrier, big enough to hold thousands of warriors. Taehyung tensed beside him. "That's the one that's been coordinating the attacks on this sector," he said. "I've tried to reach it a dozen times, but there are too many between me and it." Doyen looked at the ship and then at Taehyung. An idea formed in his mind, reckless and dangerous. "What if we had 2 weapons instead of 1? Taehyung smiled, and for the first time it looked almost real. "Then maybe we could actually kill something that matters," they told Somin the plan. She thought they were insane but helped anyway, programming the beacon to draw the Veskari toward the survivor's position while broadcasting the distress call. It was risky. If rescue didn't come in time, everyone would die. But if the plan worked, they could take out the brood carrier and buy the survivors days or even weeks of safety. The Veskari came in force, drawn by the beacon and by the presence of the 2 precursor weapons. Doyen and Taehyung stood side by side as the swarm approached. The life spear glowed blue. The death blade drank in light until it looked like a hole in reality. "For everyone who's already dead," Taehyung said. "And everyone who's still alive," Doyen replied.